All right, looks like we are rolling. Mike Cassette here with Remax Gateway. It's Friday. Coming up is Christmas. Got my Santa outfit on to be in a holiday spirit. So, want to give you a quick year-end market update and my bold predictions, as well as debunk some of the myths that we're seeing in on the internet that are completely untrue. So, yesterday I sent out my weekly market report. People are buying land in the metaverse. Can you believe that? It's crazy. But you can do it, and there is an ROI to be had. Second, the myth that I'm still hearing about, and I can't even believe it because it's completely not true and it's not happening at all. And this is, there's going to be a bunch of foreclosures hitting the market and the market's going to crash. And as clickbait, it's clickbait, y'all. Don't pay attention to it. Let's think about the math. The moratorium on foreclosures, the forbearance stuff, started in April of 2020 through September. That's 18 months. So in 2020, the market appreciated by 30%. And another 20% in 2021. That's 50% in 2 years. So if you take 18 months, that's about 35% appreciation, right? The cost to sell a house is roughly 8%. So even if you bump that to 10%, then people have appreciated their homes by 35%. Take out the 10% for selling costs, it's 25% appreciation. So if you financed 100% of your home, which most people don't do unless you're a veteran or a USDA loan, then you have 25% appreciation built into your home, even at 100% financing. So if you didn't have to pay a mortgage, and you can't pay a mortgage for 18 months, you get to live there for basically free. And if you still don't have a job, you're not going to foreclose, you're just going to sell your house and walk away with all that cash, right? Well, that's what people are doing. That's why there is very few foreclosures at all. Now, the headline is the foreclosure rate is spiking, right? Even Realtor.com reported this. Here is the ad right here. You can see foreclosure rate is spiking, is in another 2000 crisis. Well, if you look closely, this is 2019, 28,000 foreclosures. 2020, there was only 5,600 foreclosures. Okay, they literally had a moratorium so you could not get foreclosed on. So these foreclosures happened prior to the moratorium. And 2021, this is in August 21, August 2020, and August 2019. There is 8,348 foreclosures. Compare that to 28,000 foreclosures. This is a normal 2019 year. This was this year. Yeah, they spiked compared to last year because people could not foreclose because of the moratorium. So, of course they're spiking. But it's 20,000 less than 2019. So, and all they got to do is sell their house. Secondly, the Fed met on Wednesday, and they confirmed what everyone suspected. Inflation is through the roof, and unemployment is back down to about 5%. We're still about 4 million jobs shy of where we were pre-pandemic, but the unemployment rate is back to normal. So those are the two factors that the Fed takes into consideration, along with a few others. Those two main ones are kind of what's helping them dictate their policy. So the Fed was buying $120 billion with a B, billion dollars of mortgage-backed securities and treasury bonds. And this was to clear off the books so more lenders could lend money. And then they dropped the rate down to zero. So the effective rate for bank trading and stuff, the Fed rate was zero, about 2.5%. And then now the trickled down to mortgage rates, which were in the twos last year. So fast forward. The Fed has seen these numbers of inflation because we just printed trillions of dollars, and they've seen the unemployment rate drop back down. Now, in order to hedge against the inflation, the lenders need to get the value of their money that they're lending people. So if I'm lending you money and you're paying it back, and that same money you're paying me back does not buy what it bought before I lent it to you, then there's no point in me lending you money. Now, is there? So that's why interest rate is important to keep the buying power of the lending money, so I can make a little bit of money when I let you borrow my money. That's what's going on. So the Fed is saying, okay, we're going to taper this off. Tapering, that's the word that they're using. Instead of 120 billion, we're going to decrease this by 30 billion. The projection was about 15 billion a month that they were going to taper off. Well, now they double that. So what does that do? That brings the projections for all of the interest rates coming in the next year, moves them up a notch. Now, the projected rate now with the doubling of the tapering is going to be in the spring. And then they said they're going to raise rates by a quarter of a point 3 times next year. So, the beginning of this year, rates were at 2.75. The end of next year, they're going to be at 3.75. Now, why is that important? 1% interest rate at that level, depending on your mortgage size, is then going to be anywhere between 10% and 12% purchasing power. So, what is purchasing power? Well, if you're approved at the beginning of the year for a $500,000 mortgage and you are maxed out, that's it, bank's not going to let you borrow anymore. Well, if your rate goes up by a point, now you're only approved for $450,000. So, if you're planning on buying a home, then you need to purchase it earlier rather than later. Now, the spring is when the tapering will be done, and then they will start raising the rate incrementally 3 times throughout the year. Summer, fall, winter, that is the projection. So, you're going to want to move earlier if you're a rate-sensitive buyer, because home prices are also going up. Now, what rate? We don't know yet. I have my projections, which I'm going to give you in a second. So to put this all in perspective, historically over the last 5 years, this is what the interest rate chart looks like, right? So we started in 2018, dipping down below 5%. And shocking, at the time when I started 16 years ago, the rates were in the mid-6s, even touching to 7%. If you got a 6.5 rate or 6.25 rate, that was awesome. That means you had great credit. Well, this is what we've been dealing with for the last 2 years. 2020, boom, dropped the rate, and now we are right about here. So, even if it goes up by a whole point to 3%, or almost 4%, we're still going to be right here in this range, right? So that's going to be back, same rate we had about 2 years ago. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is going to happen, and the Fed has just told us on Wednesday a pretty good timeline, barring any future COVID craziness. So now, my bold predictions for the Austin market and the national market. I think that during the springtime, based on the numbers we're seeing right now, November took off unexpectedly. We were kind of thinking that the amount of activity would start declining in the wintertime, as it traditionally does, and get back to the normalcy of the market we're used to. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, it kind of took off again. We are producing less houses than are demanded. Moving into the spring, the builders are still pumping out houses. Sellers are going to be putting their houses on the market. We're going to see a lot more inventory. That inventory is going to get eaten up, especially while the interest rate is still low. When the Fed finishes their tapering, will be projected to be in the spring, then they will tick the rate up by a quarter of a point. Summertime will be still a phenomenal amount of activity, phenomenal number of sales, and maybe beat this year even for the number of sales and activity. Prices are projected 3 to 7% range. So here is another myth that people are putting out there, and it kind of makes sense. Raising interest rates causes a decline in sales. Well, actually, historically, that is not true. So you can see by this graph here, this is the historical from 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020. The red right here is when the rates have risen. The yellow is when the rates are falling. Well, this is the number of sales, right? So you can see that a rising rates does not necessarily mean the number of sales falls. Why is that? Well, there's lots of investors. Investors come back in the market with their cash. They like to use their cash. It's more effective when the rates are coming up because less people are combating for properties. So back to my prediction. When the Fed does raise the rate in the summer, then we are going to see nationally a little bit of a slowdown. What I mean by slowdown is the traditional first-time homebuyer, that massive amount of demand is going to kind of drop off. At some point, all these first-time homebuyers that have just been flooding the market more so than any other time before, they are going to reach a tipping point, which is coming. The inventory production, we're coming around the corner, the inventory corner, to where the builders that have just pumping out houses are going to start catching up. And as the rate rises, the first-time home buyers are going to start falling off. Every quarter of a point that goes up, first-time home buyer chunk is going to fall off. Now, throughout the summer is going to be a great year. Come the fall is going to be a lot slower than we've seen recently in this last 2 years. There's going to be a second interest rate rise. At that point, we'll be at about 3.5%, right? Which is not crazy. 3.5% is fantastic. Then the winter time nationally is going to be very different. This is my projection. There's going to be very different scenario, very different market next winter than these last 2 winters, and maybe even a little bit slower than 2019. So I think that the luxury market is not going to be affected because those guys, the hedge fund guys, they're hedging against inflation. They're pulling money out of markets and they're paying cash for vacation homes. They're not competing with interest rates. Their motivations are different than the traditional first-time home buyer. But the first-time home buyer will affect the move-up buyer. So when the first-time home buyers pull back, then you're going to start seeing the move-up buyers. That demand is going to start falling off. The builder inventory and the move-up inventory is going to start increasing, right? So we're going to have a lot more houses, to sell, and the rate will be a little higher, but there'll be a lot more inventory and things will begin to slow down on a national level. The luxury market probably won't be affected whatsoever next year. The Austin market is going to have a little bit of a lag time behind the national market. We're kind of a tip of the iceberg here, along with several other hot markets around the country. National market stuff hit us nearly as hard as it will in lots of other parts of the country. That's been the typical case throughout the last recession. So, going into 2023, the beginning of 2023, in the springtime of 2023, and save this video, I'll save it, but in 2023 in the springtime, that is when the Austin market will see a big difference in the seasonality, traffic, and all of those metrics is in the spring. The rest of the country is really going to feel it, in my opinion, what I see coming in the fall and the winter, and then Austin is going to see a little bit of a slowdown come spring of 2023. Rates are going to be close to 4% by then, and the amount of inventory will be pretty stacked. So that's what I'm seeing happening. That's what, based on what the Fed says, based on what I've been reading this last month over tons and tons of different projections and being here for the last 16 years. So this next year is going to be great. Spring's going to be great. Summer's going to be great. Fall will normalize. Winter will be normalized for Austin. And we will see double-digit appreciation. All right, you can write that down. People are projecting nationally 5-8% appreciation. For Austin, I am predicting 10 to 15% appreciation for 2022. That is my projection, my bold prediction for 2022, the Austin market. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. Turn this over to nice here. And I will be in touch with you. Check out my weekly market report. Comes out every single Thursday. Breaks it down as I'm seeing it on the ground, and has some other fun stuff in there as well, like how to buy property in a metaverse. Crazy. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I will see you soon. Cheers.